Hi, Randy. How are you?
Hi, Kyle. I'm great. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you, too. This is a really cool new record that you've done here with By George.
Thank you.
If I read correctly, I see that this sort of actually starts with John Lennon, though, right?
Well, I was lucky enough to be invited to Liverpool for John Lennon's 75th birthday. A friend of mine was doing Let It Be there, the stage play, where guys are dressed as the Beatles, right from the Black Leathers in Germany right through Sgt. Pepper, right, and then on the roof. And so it's a great stage play, and he was doing it on John Lennon's birthday in Liverpool. So I got invited to that. So as a pure fan, I went and did the tour of Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane and saw Eleanor Rigby's grave, went to the Cavern in the Casbah, stayed at the Hard Day's Night Hotel. It was incredible. And then when I came home, I think, George Harrison's turning 75 in a couple of years. I should do something for George Harrison's 75th birthday. And I'd always done the George Harrison songs on stage because most lead guitar players, which is what I was, got to sing the George songs, and the drummer got to sing the Ringo songs while the other guys sang the John and Paul songs. And so I just gathered a bunch of George Harrison songs and paid tribute to him as a guitar player and a songwriter to redo the songs in a different style, because there's no way I could do it better than George and the Beatles did it, or Clapton playing on some of their songs. There's just no way you could surpass that. There's no point in just replicating it, cookie-cuttering it. And so I reinvented them and took the major songs, put them in minor keys, did the slow ones as shuffles, slowed the fast ones down, and just tried to honor the songs, and got lucky with a couple. Some sank like lead weights, and no one will ever hear those. And the ones that floated up high and in the sunshine, those are the ones that made the album.
I love how these are flipped, because you're right. You hear the melody and you're like, oh, I know this song, but everything else sounds so different. Like, I'd be curious, like, what did you discover or rediscover about these songs that you might not have heard before with these new arrangements?
Well, they last the test of time. It's like 50 years old, some of these songs now. And what I found out is amazing. First of all, I did a lyric sheet for it, and I sent it into the label, and they said, why are you putting in a lyric sheet? Every time we play this album, everybody sings along. Everybody knows every word. So the only lyrics in there are Between Two Mountains, which I wrote to describe the album, and George being in the studio or being in a band between the mountains of Lennon and McCartney. And so it just shows what great songs they are. And I see a lot of people baffled when the song starts. They get into the groove. And then when the singing starts, immediately they sing along right away. So it's a fun thing to sing, get a new record, and you can sing along to it right away.
And that song, Between Two Mountains, stylistically, were you trying to go for sort of a Harrison Beatles sound aside from the lyrics?
I did, and also those are not typical lyrics I wrote. I was kind of inspired by the spirit of George one night that had me writing about peace within and there's spirit within and all you need is love and that kind of stuff. And then I wrote the song in 3 different sections. I had 3 pieces of lyrics that when I put together were very much like a George Harrison song, like My Sweet Lord or something. And I thought, this is really amazing. And then throughout the album, I took George Harrison's guitar licks and sprinkled them on different songs. So if you hear Between Two Mountains, the solo in the middle is what he played in And I Love Her. Simple little guitar thing, dun da da da. It comes in the middle of Between Two Mountains, and then in the outro, in Think for Yourself, the Beatles version that George wrote and sang with the Beatles, the My Sweet Lord slide guitar licks are put in over Think for Yourself. So there's little tastes of George here and there that are quite surprising if you're a Beatles fan or a guitar player. At first, you don't know where it's from. Then you go, do, 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 do. Oh, that's My Sweet Lord. But we didn't do My Sweet Lord. You know what I mean? So it's a tribute to My Sweet Lord because we couldn't do it. I mean, it's coming out now as a double vinyl album in black and white marble. It's going to run at 45 RPM. It's going to be a collector's item. So it's going to be really great. So I'm really thrilled with the whole thing.
Yeah, thinking back on it, too, I mean, a lot of people get to cover whoever they want to, but not all of those folks were sort of peers of the artist they're covering, and you being, in 2 of the greatest rock bands of all time, I mean, and one of those being around while the Beatles were still a band, I mean, were they in the peripheral? Was it one of those things where they were always sort of there?
Well, I was like any other band. It changed every band in the world because then you'd have an Elvis or a Gene Vincent or Eddie Cochran up front and backup guys. And suddenly on Ed Sullivan, there was 3 guys standing up front singing together. And then the drummer sang and the lead guitar player sang and Lennon and McCartney traded vocals. That suddenly every band said, we can do that. Ringo's not that great a singer. I'm a drummer. I'm going to sing Ringo songs. So every drummer sang the Ringo songs. Me being lead guitar, I sang the George songs. So I would wait for the next Beatles album, and it would come out, and between the 2 mountains of Lennon and McCartney would be this one George Harrison song, and I got to sing it. So a lot of these songs are ones I've sang all my life. since I saw them on Ed Sullivan. And I just reinvented them. So I wasn't just blandly kind of copying them, trying to outdo them, because you can't outdo them. The magic that him and Clapton had in some of his songs, Guitar Gently Weeps and things like that, you could never recreate it. So all I could do was, try to do my own, and that would maybe stand up next to it.
And I know you were in the All-Star Band with Ringo, but did you have any kind of relationship with any of the other Beatles, including George?
No, I spoke to George once on the phone when I left the Guess Who in 1970. I had a press agent named Richie York. He was also the Beatles and John Lennon's press agent, and he worked with Derek Taylor. And when I was done my gallbladder problem, like I was in the hospital after the Guess Who, I had nothing to do, and Richie York called me up and he said, here's George Harrison's number, give him a call. He's putting together a band. And I said, what, are you kidding? And he said, no, I'll tell him I gave your number, and I know he's putting together a band. So I phoned this number, and I'm in Winnipeg. It's about noon, so it's about 6 or 7 at night in England. And I say, hello, this is so-and-so from Winnipeg. And a beautiful voice answered the phone, which I imagine was Patty Boyd, I think. And she said, you're calling from Winnipeg? Is that like where Winnie the Pooh is from? And I go, yeah. She goes, oh, great, George will talk to you. He's in the garden, hang on. So I wait a couple of minutes. She goes and gets George. He comes to the phone and goes, hello, this is George, the way he talks. And I say, oh, this is Randy Bachman from the Guess Who in Winnipeg. And he said, oh, I saw you on Top of the Pops doing American Woman. It was great. And I said, well, I'm not in the band anymore, and I hear you're starting a band. Richie York gave me your number. And he says, are you calling from where Winnie the Pooh is from, the same thing? And I say, yeah. And he says, well, my best friend plays guitar, Eric. You might have heard of him, like it's Eric Clapton. And I say, well, thanks very much. And he says, have a nice life. And I say, good luck on your new band. And then he goes on with his new band. And I go on with my band, which becomes Bachman Turner Overdrive, right? And I saw the movie Christopher Robin over Christmas, and there's an actual plaque they show to Winnie the Pooh being from Winnipeg.
Oh, that's so funny. You've always got Winnie the Pooh on your side, if nothing else.
I know, yeah, exactly.
Well, I know this gives you a chance to get away from your own material, but is there anything else you're working on, original-wise?
Well, people are already asking, is there going to be a follow-up to By George? And I'm going, well, I could have George II, who was the king before Queen Elizabeth, who's the queen right now. I could call an album George II and put a coin on with George Harrison's head on the coin and give away coins, right? I thought, well, that would be that would not be right. I just got to leave this one the way it is. And so I have another album planned. If Universal asks me to do another album, I have another album planned that's going to be another wonderful tribute to a musical genre. My last album was called Heavy Blues, and it was a tribute to the power trios from England, Cream, Hendrix, The Who, and Zeppelin, who all were paying tribute to the American blues guys, like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and stuff. And so that was my previous album a couple of years ago called Heavy Blues. And I've done the thing with George, and now I've got another one planned. If somebody wants an album out, I'm happy to do an album. I'm happy to keep going. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
If you call me with a gig offer, I'll take the gig.
I love what you're doing, Randy. It's been so much fun to talk with you here. Thanks for this record, and I'll look forward to hoping that someone picks you up for that, takes you up on that offer there.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.